and thank you for joining me this afternoon. And whenever you watch this, have a lovely day. Thank you for joining me. I'm Lizzie, and I'm going to show you today how to make this beautiful little makeup bag. I saw a tutorial on YouTube recently, and it was such a great tutorial that I thought, you know what, there was a part of it that really worked well, and it's so different to finishing off than you would normally expect. So if I turn this inside out, this is a fully lined little makeup bag if you want, but you can alter the pattern. I'm going to give you the dimensions for this, but you can alter the pattern. So this could be a pencil case or something like that. But look, you can see that it's fully lined, and guess what? It's one piece all the way round here, and there's no seam where I've stitched it together, you know, where you've turned through. So I'm going to show you that particular technique because it really makes a nice neat finish. In actual fact, I would say this is probably a really good professional finish to your project. Okay, I'm gonna put you on the overhead now so you can see better. There's probably going to be lots of shadows and lots of different lightings because I've got everything switched on here today to help you all out. So just to show you this again, I'll push this out to the right side so you can see how it works. And let's just zoom in a little bit here so we can see. So there we are. So there is the little bag, and obviously it has a little zip and it has tabs at each end, so it helps with the turning through. So it's not so bulky with the zips either end. And it's made, well actually it's kind of made with one piece, although I have obviously added this extra colour here. And again, if I turn it through so you can see the inside, it's fully lined. And there's no, you'll see that there's no, you can't see the turning point, okay? Because we always need a turning point, don't we? A turning gap to allow us to turn these things through nice and neat. And wherever you look, it doesn't matter where you look, and I do apologise for the shadows here, I haven't got my windows closed. You'll see that there's no sort of gap. This is all one piece here, and it's a great little technique that I want to show you. So we're going to stitch it up this afternoon, and you'll be able to see how it's done, how easy it is, and I'm going to give you the dimensions so you can go away and make your own. Now I'll just make sure that I am live on Facebook. It looks like I am, so that's just that technical little bit I have to do first of all, which is always a pain, isn't it? Because it delays things just slightly. Okay, so we've got it there. So as long as I've got my sound off, I can have a look. So we've got lots of people joining us already. Thank you very much. Like I say, I'm going to post all the sizes, where you can see all the sizes just here. I'm going to go through those now just to make this little zip bag. And as I say, it looks really professional. So without further ado, these are the sizes that you need. So you need 3 pieces. This is to make this one with the separate bottom. You need 3 pieces, 4.5 inches by 9 inches. 1 piece, this is for your lining, 12.5 inches by 9 inches. And you need 2 pieces, 2.5 inches by 2, and they're to make your little zip tab. And then your zip needs to be about 7.25 inches long, which, as you can see, is nowhere near the 9 inches wide, but don't forget we've got these tabs to put on. So those are the dimensions for this particular little bag. This is the sunshine on my desk here. I should have put my blinds up, but never mind. So there we are. So take a note of those, and then you'll be able to actually follow those and cut those out. Okay, I'll put those to one side. So here we go. So there's the zip. There's the zip for you there. That's about 7.25 inches. And I've used my zip on a roll, so just be aware that you don't want to slide this slider off, otherwise it will zoom off, and always a little bit tricky to put them back on. You've got your 2 by 2.5 inch tabs there. I'll show you how to prepare those. Then you've got your your 3 main pieces. So you've got your decorative, I've chosen to do the tortoises again because they're so cute, and then these have to go the other way around because that's obviously the other side of the bag. So those are our 3 pieces there, and if I bring those further in you can see how that looks. And then underneath that, and these have all been stabilised, and now unless you know already, I always use the Vaseline H250. I use that on practically everything that I make, and even sometimes I'll do a double layer. So sometimes if I make a bag, it's 2 layers of this, but because we've actually made our lining stiffened as well, so this is our lining piece, and that's got the H250 on the back as well. So we've kind of double sort of stabilised it, if you like. So the first thing we need to do, and I'll just get these bits and bobs out the way. In fact, what we could do is just iron those little pieces. So I'll just bring my little prim iron in, just to, gosh, I wish I'd put my blinds up now, just so you can see how I'm going to do this. And I've just got a little ironing mat here. So what we want to do is we're going to turn over 1/4 of an inch each end. Okay, so 1/4 of an inch. And don't worry, this is going to be a lot bigger or wider than your zip. That's intentional, so it's not too fiddly. Okay, so there we go. I'll just give those a little iron, and then again 1/4 of an inch each end, and that's that done. And what you could do is just fold it in half and give that a little iron as well. And you can see that when I bring the zip in, you'll see that it's way bigger than it needs to be. But that, like I say, that's intentional, because then it's easy for us to stitch, and that's one of the first things we'll be doing. So you've got your fabrics here. Let's just come out a wee bit. Oops, that's in. Let's go out. And we need to join these. Now you could do this on your lovely new overlockers if you managed to get one of those the other day. If not, we'll just do it straight on the machine. It's inside the bag, so you don't need to worry about actual neatness. Bernie says, I must remember that. You know what, Bernie? I use this all the time. H250, H250, H250. On one little video I did, I called it H220. And so many ladies contacted me to say, I can't find it, Lizzie, I can't find it. Well, you know, you wouldn't, would you? Because it doesn't exist. So that's my fault. And you'll find this is going to take us about an hour. I'll just take it a little bit of slow stitching here. So look, what I've done is I've joined those 3 pieces together. You can see, just join them together, and I'm going to stitch down those edges there. So that's, I'm going to bring the beast in, and we're going to stitch that. Now I've got another camera set up. You may have noticed this contraption here. Few stacking shelving unit, couple of plastic boxes, and another white plastic box on the top here. It's one of Anna's craft boxes, and I've set this up so I'm hoping that we'll be able to see some of the action actually on the machine. Who knows? Well, I'm going to give it a go. So I'm going to bring the beast up. Ooh, so heavy. And I'm going to switch to that camera just to see if you can see this. Hello. So that's not too bad. Now, when I tried to zoom in before, it wouldn't. So no, it's still not. It still doesn't want to zoom in. Who knows why? Who knows the trickery of these technical bits and bobs? So look, I've turned it slightly so you can see. It's nothing too difficult for you to follow, but I did think it would be quite nice if we could see the stitching. So I've got my 1/4 inch foot on here, and I'm just going to. I'm not going to bother going backwards and forwards because this is going to be caught into a seam. And actually stabilising the fabric actually helps it not to move too much. There we go. And then if I do the other side, do it so I can see the pins. Let's see what you're seeing. That's not bad, is it? I think I could do with a brownie point for that. That's because I'm always thinking of you. If you could see how this is all set up. Gosh, it's so funny. Anyway, there we are. And that's joined our 3 pieces together, so I'll do it there so you can see. And hopefully we've got our tortoises going the right way. That's always useful. So a nice touch here is to actually top stitch these. Now you can, it doesn't really matter which way you top stitch. In other words, if whatever you do, do it the same. So I'm going to push my seams out to the side, to the top and bottom pieces. But you could always equally do it the other way around if you want to. It makes no difference really. It's just, what I really want you to do is have a go. And there we go. And just enjoy having a little play on your machine. Get used to your machine if it's new to you. And like I always say, if you're a bit nervous about things like top stitching, that sort of thing, then you could always draw a line. I'd do that, certainly I'd do that. My machine never grabs that first bit. My granddaughter follows a line that I might have drawn. So hopefully you can see what I'm doing. Just a simple top stitch. There we go. I'll just cut my threads so they're nice and neat. And that's quite a good practice to get into the habit of doing, is to neaten your threads off. I mean, you might have a super machine that cuts all your threads for you, but certainly the beginning ones, you wouldn't have that facility. I don't think there's a machine that does that anyway. So there we are. So we joined all our pieces together there. So the other thing I want to do now is just to prepare the zip. Now don't get too nervous about preparing a zip. So there we are. So there's the right side of the zip facing us. There's the little piece that I just made before. And what I want to do is just encase that into that little, so where you've folded over 1/4 inch, just pop your zip in there of just 1/4 inch. Do you see that? And then, in actual fact, you could, if you wanted to, if you've got the time, you want to do this nice and slowly, you could glue that in place so it doesn't wriggle, but I'm just gonna kind of go for it. And then pop your lid over the top, and then all we're going to do is top stitch. Let me get my poke tool in. I'm just going to top stitch from here down to here, and that will make not only a nice tab here, but also it'll encase the end of that zip, so our zip doesn't go flying off. So again, just check and make sure it's just tucked in there 1/4 inch. Don't worry about this being in the middle. I'll show you in a minute why I'm saying that. So again, just check that we've got this just 1/4 inch, because I've measured this accurately. Can you believe? If that doesn't want to go over, just give it a little tug. Don't matter how expensive your machines are, sometimes they always need a little help. This machine I've got here, don't be frightened when I say this, it's £3,000 worth, and even that will struggle sometimes going over a zip. I know, it was a treat when I turned 60. So that's my excuse. So look, I've neatened it off, so I'll cut my ends off there. So now I've got a nice zip end there. Okay, so we're going to do the same the other end. Now before we put this on, what I need you to do is measure and make sure that this is 9 inches from there to there. Okay, so from there to there, it's got to be 9 inches. So I'm just going to reach and get my tape measure, because we've got to measure here, but this only goes up to 6, and I could go 6, 7, 8, 9, but I don't trust myself. So I actually use this a lot, this tape measure on the machine, but when it comes to accuracy, I like to get my good old tape measure out. So if we measure from there to there, it's a little bit off. I think I can be forgiven for that. As long as we can get it in there, we're all right. And I'm just going to, again, just top stitch right across. There we go. Let's just make sure those are all caught. So what you want to do is just make sure that those folded edges are the same either side. So when you stitch, it catches both, because that's the back side, this is the front side. And again, I'm just going to neaten that off. Okay, and this one as well. And we should thereabouts be about 9 inch. I'm saying thereabouts because you know what, I don't lose sleep over this too much. So if I put my tape measure there, oh, a bit short, 8.5. That'll be interesting. Okay, you need it to be 1/2 inch longer. So cut your zip 8.5 inches. I could have worked that out for myself, really, couldn't I? Never mind. So we'll see how we go with this. I was going to give this away actually on this live Facebook. If you comment while this is live, it doesn't count when it's not live. So if you comment on when it's live, I'm going to give this away. So the next thing we need to do is to put the zip in. So we need to do one. I'm going to do one at a time. You can see that's slightly short there, look. But we'll be all right with that. I'm sure that'll be fine. We'll suss it out. So we're going to do the right side, you know, the tortoise side onto the zip first, and then we'll do the lining piece. So I just need to change my foot to a zipper foot, and I do recommend you use a zipper foot. It does make quite a bit of difference. You can get right in there. See, I've moved my needle right to that farthest edge. So what we need to do now is just pop our zip on. I've turned it over so I can see my zip, and oh dear, that should meet either end, but there we are. So now I'm just going to start from one end. I might trim this down so it's a little bit of a better fit. And then I'm literally just going to, my zipper foot, and it's the same with yours, it'll find the edge of it, okay? So I'm doing right sides of my fabric to the right side of the zip. So if I turn it like that, you can see. So again, when I want to take my slider out of the way, I'm just going to lift my needle and whiz that past, and then carry on. There we go. I might do bigger seams there so it catches that in. So that's the first part done. And now we want to put the lining on, okay? So the lining piece is this piece here, and again we need it to be right sides onto our fabric. So when you always have to think about when you're going to, how you're going to, because normally you would sandwich this in all together. So this lining goes over the top here. It kind of makes sense because look, right sides of the lining, wrong side of the zip, and if I was to pinch that to hold it, if we fold that back, that's going to be the correct way inside the bag. So we'll just stitch that now. Now a good tip is to turn it over and actually follow your original stitching. So your original stitching is here. So I would now just go inside that original stitching. My lining is just underneath there, okay? So just lining that all up. We're just going to follow that. Now we need to know where our zipper is, which is right back here. So here we go. Oh, Nolene, you're in Australia. It's, what's that? 11:30, 20 here. Oh, in the evening. Gosh, well I'll try and get it finished before midnight, Nolene, so you can get to bed. So is that 11 p.m. today? No, yes. Oh god, is it yesterday or today? I don't know. I can't work it out. Is it Saturday or Sunday? Wait a minute. Let's see what she said. Sunday. Oh, it is tonight. It's funny, isn't it? I know. I watch people trying to figure out what time zone they're in. It's not always easy. So look, there we are. So can you see right side of the zip? So when we fold that back, look, that all works beautifully. Okay. So the next thing to do is to bring the bottom edge here. Let's just make sure you can see this. So this bottom edge here, you want to bring that up and bring it up to this edge here, all right? And then flip it over so you can see the back of the zip. I'm going to iron this in a second so it's nice and neat. Let's get the zip slider out of the way and line this up. So don't forget we need to stick it over the edge just a little bit. I might trim that back. I don't know, I can't make up my mind. So let's just give it a head start. That's it. My zipper foot on this machine is a really narrow one. I don't know if you can see how narrow that is. And this is definitely not a good zipper foot. I can't get another one for this machine that's any wider. But if you've got a really wide zipper foot, you know what? It grabs so much better than this little really narrow one. And I'm sure having a narrow one is brilliant. But there are occasions when it's a bit of a pain. So now we need to get that zipper slider right out the way. And you'll see we've made a tube, you see, so you need to just get your hand in there and sort that out. So here we go. Straight up to the end there. Okay. And also it would be nice to actually top stitch all of this. So if we look inside there, you've made a tube now, you see, and it would be nice to top stitch all of that, but we'll leave that bit out for the time being, okay? But I do need to try and press this, so I will in a sec. So then we've got to work out. You end up with this tube here and this lining fabric here, and we do need to put this lining on somehow, and you've got to try and figure out how, but I promise you it's dead easy. So you're bringing this bottom edge up here again, see this bottom edge here, and you're bringing it up to this part here, and you're going to do exactly what you did before, and you're just going to stitch along there. So if I bring this up, and so really what you're making is two tubes. Now I'm hoping that you can see that fine. So you've brought that end up, and it's the right side of your lining fabric has come up to the wrong side of your zip. Yeah, so it's coming up here, just there. Look, and this is where you're going to stitch your zip along again with the lining, but we're going to do something just slightly different, okay? And again, I'm just going to flip this over so I can see my original stitch line on the zip, okay? And then I'm just going to follow that. So my lining is underneath, look, there it is, okay? That's my first bit of stitching there, and you can probably see the original line of my stitching there. So again, I'm just going to stitch here. That's going to be inside the bag, so I shouldn't worry about that showing. I mean, you can go exactly on the line if you want. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but we already have enough stresses, don't we, trying to do these things? So I'm just going to stop there. I just remembered. Stop there. I'm going to do a back stitch, lift my needle up, and then I'm going to swing. I'm going to just move my zip slider out of the way, and I'm going to swing right over here. So I'm leaving a gap of a bit more, maybe about a good 3.5 inches, and then just broke my needle. So let's just change the needle. See if I can find one real quick. Let's see if I can find one. Oh my gosh, where do I put my needles? Anybody know where I put my needles? Oh yeah, what's this one? Oh, that's a twin needle, that won't do. Hold on, where's my little bag? Let me just see if I can find my little bag. Bear with. Let me change you to a different angle. This is all about entertainment. So, I've never had a needle break on me before, not when I've been doing a Facebook Live. So, let's get a needle. It's good practice for you, changing a needle. I don't think it went down in my machine, so we're okay. Pop this up. So you always know about flat back to the back of your machine, all that malarkey, don't you? And we'll give this a thread. Now this machine does have a threader. I've probably used it once because I just find it super easy to so let's just measure and I'll tell you. I just find it easy just to manually thread. So that is, well, it's just about 4 inches. So I've left a 4-inch gap. Bit worried about that breaking there. Don't know why I did that. So I'll just keep you on the front camera for a minute. So I'm just literally going down my zip. Okay. So what I've done is I've got 2 tubes now. So I'll tell you what. Let's do the overhead. Let's see if we can figure out which is the overhead. Oh, this is the overhead. Look. So if I just push that out of the way for a second, and I want you to see what we've done. So I've attached. The first thing I did was attach one of these. The outside fabric onto the zip, okay, and then I stitch the lining in place, and I just go slightly in. Let me see if I can zoom in enough so you can see. So I just go slightly in, so there's a second row of stitching in there that you'll be able to see, and that is actually the lining stitching, okay. And then what I did was I did the other side here, okay. And again, you'll see the double row of stitching. So that's my first line all the way across there. And then the second row is the lining that I've put in, and I've stopped here and I've stopped here. Okay. So, and that is my turning point, and you'll see why that's so clever in a minute. Okay. So next thing we have to do, and it just looks a little odd at this moment in time, doesn't it, is I'll get my hand in there and I'll open up the zip full way, and I'm just going to go in there and I'm just going to bring this all through just for a moment, and I want you to see what it looks like when it's all turned through. Obviously we've got to stitch up the sides, so we were actually nearly done, to be honest. I'm going to give it a 1/2 inch seam allowance just to get those zip ends in. So do you see, by turning it through here, so that's the gap I left in the bag, it gives us a much neater finish, and you can hand stitch that. In the one that I made, you can see I've top stitched both sides, which meant that when I closed the gap, I think it's here, I missed a couple of stitches, but when I closed the gap, I finished off the top stitching, because I only top stitched to there and there, and when I turned it through and finished it all, I just top stitched that opening closed, and that's what gives us a lovely neat finish, rather than having that seam that you always see when you open up the bag. So I think because I haven't top stitched this, I will probably hand stitch that or glue that down. Certainly glue is my favourite thought. So the next thing we need to do is to actually stitch down the side. So again, we're going to just turn it through that gap again. And all this turning backwards and forwards, it will crease your fabric a little bit because we've got that fabulous stabiliser in there. So obviously you'll perhaps give it a press, and if you haven't got a tailor's ham, invest in one, because a tailor's ham is brilliant for this sort of thing. Okay, so back to where we were. So these are our two halves, if you like, our two tubes, and the zip is what's making them into tubes, you can see. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to stitch up from here to here, all the way along. Okay, I'll put it on the other camera in a sec. And when we get to the zip part, it's preferable to actually stitch the zip to the lining, so you're folding the zip to the lining side. Let me just snip all my ends off. So if we look inside, there's our pink tab. Can you see our pink tab there? We're going to push that to the lining side. Okay, if you ever wonder which way you should go with that, it's the lining. Okay. So I'm just going to stitch those two together now. I'll just bring in the beast. Let's see, it's that one there, isn't it? So we'll bring it in. Ooh. So this is where we need to change the foot and put the other foot on. And make sure our needle is back to the central position again. There we are, it is now. So hopefully you can see that okay. And like I say, you're just going to push that to the lining. So I'm going to do about 1/2 inch. Don't worry about a reverse stitch there, a locking stitch, because we're going to cut the corners off. So again, just as you come up, just be aware you've got a lot of layers going on here. So take it slowly. Doesn't matter, like I said before, doesn't matter how expensive your machine is and what make it is and all the rest of it. Sometimes they do struggle, which is fine. I don't think I got my pieces brilliantly lined up. And again, you don't need to reverse stitch there. So let's try and get this one lined up at least. There we go. It's a bit like nesting seams when you're quilting. Make sure your fabric is all nice. Oh no, I did a reverse. That's habit, isn't it? I'll just bring it up. And again, just fold that little tab to the lining side. I think my zip slide is just there, so I'm very cautious of that. There we go. There we go. Right, so let's get the overhead in, because the next thing we need to do is to draw ourselves a little corner. Just going to look for my ruler. Why do these things always disappear? Oh, here we are. So a little ruler here, and I found that about so ignore this line here. Let's see if make sure you can see this. So this is your stitch line. So ignore that. So you want the square to go from your stitch line here. So if we say, what do you reckon? 1.5 is a bit much, I'd say. Let's make it a 1 inch. So we'll draw a square, a 1 inch. We could do it that way, it'd be easier, wouldn't it? So you're just lining that up like that. Do you see? This one. Put the 1 inch line. There's our stitch line. So just bring your ruler in and just draw a little square. Same with this. That's my stitch line. And like any of these projects, it's always a good thing to press as you go as well. There's my stitch line, because this isn't lying as nice as it could, because it needs a press. So there we are, so there's your squares, and all we need to do now is just to cut those squares away. Like that. a bit nerve-wracking, isn't it? You just made this lovely pouch and now you're cutting into it. It's fine. So one more to go. Hopefully you can see this. I've got this in the right place. It's difficult to watch and make sure. But there we are. I hold that up. Let's just try and come out a little bit more. So can you see that I've marked in a 1 inch? So there's my stitch line there, okay? And I've marked 1 inch square from there. So now all we're going to do is just squidge out those, that corner there, open it up, and then we're just going to box it by stitching across there. Okay, so let's get the machine in. Excuse me, have a little drink of ginger beer. Right, so, and if you go from point to point, you can't really go wrong. So you do need a locking stitch now. And you can open these up if you want to. I'm not going to bother. So you're literally just opening up these corners. And so that's going that way, so we just make sure that our seams are going the right way. Not that it matters too much. Again, about 1/4 inch. So if you think about it, you've taken 1 inch off the corners and then another 1/4 inch. So that's quite a lot really, isn't it? So just bear that in mind. Not to cut perhaps more than 1/4 inch. We'll see what it looks like, see what you think. And then the last one, you can see now why you need to iron this when you're done. Let's get it going the same way, because it gets manhandled quite a lot. Turning through, I was just reading a comment on the Facebook page. It's a bit weird when you first do it, Dawn, because it doesn't feel natural that you would not leave a turning point somewhere on your regular seams here. So yeah, it does feel a little unnatural, but you have left that gap in the lining, do you see? So if you follow the Facebook Live again, you'll be able to see the kind of process, and it's sometimes quite difficult to slow these things down enough or show enough, but hopefully you'll get the gist of it, especially as I've talked through it all. So on one side of the zip we've stitched the outer and the lining, and that's completely attached, but on this side we've stitched the main fabric and we've left that gap. And like I say, if you top stitch, then you can just finish this off with a top stitch if you want. So actually the bag is done apart from that last little piece. So again, you're just turning it through just the same as you normally would. And do remember to do a locking stitch on that. Let's just, let's go to the front. Let's go to the front. Yeah, so just remember to do a locking stitch, you know, when you're doing that turning point, and leave a big enough gap. I've left about 4 inches, which for a bag of this size is actually quite big. Only because it just makes it easier for you guys to see. And don't forget, of course, to leave your zip open. That's another thing you might get caught out on. So here we go. So it's just a case now of pushing all the fabric in. Look, we've got threads coming out all over the place here. And then getting those corners pushed out. And they'll want to go because you've already snipped a lot of the fabric away. and you've only got that like that 1/4 inch seam allowance, so it does want to sort of square off really nicely, and then just get those. And of course your lining is the same. It's although it's stiffened, it's very malleable. So what we'll do is I'm going to get my iron on again. I've got the smallest little ironing mat here, but that's okay. We'll wait for that to heat up a bit. And like I say, you've just got that turning gap there, and if you top stitched, then you just finish off the top stitching there and it works a treat. Or like I say, you could hand stitch that, whatever you like. And some people have got some really fancy machines that you'll be able to get that whole thing in there, and top stitch the whole thing. But quite honestly, that would be quite difficult with that specialised machine. So we'll just poke those zip tabs out. There we go. So there we are. That's it made. So I'm just going to give it a little iron with my small ironing mat. It's good to give it a good iron, because if you fold that lining fabric back, it will never get caught in the zip. And if you ever think that it might, then get a steam iron on it again and sort of push it back. And you could do like a little running stitch along there, just to hold it all in place. And then, like I say, you could get an ironing, like a ham, an ironing ham. So just this side was a little dodgy, and I knew I hadn't met the seams there, but that side is absolutely perfect. So I'm pleased with that. So I'll just glue that edge together, and then that'll be a giveaway. It needs an iron. I'm not going to even try now, so I need to go over to where my ironing ham is, right over there. But there we are. So that's it made. So I think it's quite sweet, isn't it? I've used different fabrics on the bottom, look. And they make a nice little gift for somebody. And also, if you're doing a craft store, you could fill that with goodies and sell it as a sort of present, wrap it up in cling film and make it really pretty. So there we are. That is our zipper pouch. It is a really easy one to do, always has been, always will be, but the difference here is the fact that there are no signs of a turning point, which is really quite nice. It makes it a very neat professional job, and you can see that the lining here is absolutely beautiful as well, on the inside as well as on the outside. So if I just bring in the overhead, so you can just see that sort of from the sort of lining side as well, and you can see how well that looks. And because we've stitched just a little bit further away from the original zip lining here, it just brings that lining a little bit further down the zip, which means it's not going to catch in the zip teeth at all. And then if we turn it through, and it does make a difference having the zip tabs on the end, because there's not so much bulk. And it also, because I use the spotty fabric, it kind of brings it all together a little bit as well. Again, makes it look quite professional when you start looking at like the zip tab there. Do you see how that looks? And there as well. So there we are. I think what I'll do is I'll look back at the video in just a second, and I'll answer any questions that you might have then. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure as usual. Let me know if you want to see anything else. Let me know if you want to see any more little tricks with something in particular, and then hopefully I'll be able to help you out. I've always got time for you guys, as you know. You're my pleasure. So I'll speak to you all again another time, and have a lovely rest of your day.